Hey there, guys. With the release of the Brothers War, there has been a release of some really cool Transformers cards. And if you've seen the title description of this video and seen the thumbnail, you'll know what's going on here. We're building Optimus Prime Hero, a Autobots assemble deck. So we're going to have a whole bunch of Transformers cards, the Autobots, as many as we can, and our vehicle friends into this deck, and some cards that'll help us out with what we're trying to do within this deck. It'll be a vehicles based deck and some other cards in this deck as well, but we'll have a whole bunch of fun stuff and interesting stuff to go through. But I'll throw that deck list together and then I'll show you guys what I've come up with when I get done with it. If you're enjoying the content here, you can join the Screw Army by subscribing. Alrighty, guys, so we're back at it, and here I've gotten to 100 cards. I always like to check that I get to 100 cards, because sometimes you go, oh, I'm at 99, and you have to scramble to find one more card or whatever, but whatever. You can see the price that I came to here. Just a bit over $200. It's pretty hard to make a budget deck, to be honest, especially for me. I'm terrible at making really budget decks. But, of course, you can cut a lot of the budget out with cutting some of the better dual lands that I've put in here. And, of course, you can put in much better dual lands and things that I've actually put in here. And this isn't a final list that I'm going to play with. But, hey, it's a list, and you guys can build it, and you can find yourselves some more budget-friendly cards. But we're going to go through the list of what we've got here, and we've got one Planeswalker, so it's pretty quick and easy to go through. Saheeli just makes nice little servos for us, and can also turn some of our artifacts into other creatures or artifacts or whatnot. So those little Thopters that she makes is really useful for crewing our vehicles, because otherwise we have a bit of difficulty sometimes crewing said vehicles, and we can turn some of our, more useful creatures into more useful things, or some of our vehicles into creatures by copying other things and whatnot. So there's lots of little things that can do for us. Fell the Mighty, we have a whole bunch of smaller things for the most part, and the bigger things that we do have here in the deck are mostly vehicles. So we can get around this pretty easily, this sort of destroying creatures with greater power. Dusk is sort of similar, Dusk Dawn at least, destroys everything with power 3 or greater. Yeah, we do have some power 3 or greater real creatures in this deck, but we'll mostly dodge it, and we do have that Dawn side, and the Dawn side can be useful as well. I won't go through too much at the removal. It's typical removal that you'd find in most decks, just Sword, Path. Actually, I should have a Destroy Artifact or Enchantment spell in here somewhere. A Resculpt and a Generous Gift, but that is it in here for the moment. So yeah, that's what I've got there. I've only got a couple of enchantments here. I've got mostly artifacts in this deck. Who would have thought? But anyway, we better go through them pretty quick. Thopter Spire Network, at the beginning of our upkeep, we make a 1/1 that helps us crew our vehicles and whatnot. But then when one or more artifact creatures you control do combat damage to a player, we draw a card. That's the part that we really care about. We've also got Storm the Vault, so whenever a creature of ours deals combat damage to a player, we make a treasure. And whenever we have 5 treasures, it transforms at the end step. And then it's just a very powerful land that taps for blue mana equal to the number of artifacts we control, which will be a lot. I won't go through the lands at all, really, for the most part. There's only a couple really good utility lands I want to quickly touch on, like Academy Ruins and whatnot. There's not much here that you wouldn't not expect. Mech Hanna, though, pretty useful. The ability to turn one of our vehicles into a creature is very nice, and tapping for mana of any color is also nice just for artifacts, but most of our deck is artifacts or vehicles, whatnot, so that's fine. Power Depot is also pretty good in the same regard. So yeah, that's pretty nice. What else have we got in here? Oh yes, Spire of Industry, that's pretty useful. So yeah, that's pretty much it for like what's more useful in here. The rest I've just filled out with generic good dual lands and some basics and whatnot. So yeah, not going to go through that too much. I'll go through the creatures now pretty quickly because it's only a few of them, but it does contain a lot of our more Autobots and more of the vehicles who are in the artifact deck. The Sharpshooter, this one's not too interesting to me at least, and I don't know how much it'll actually do in the deck, but hey, it's on theme. It's a Transformer card, so it's right on theme. The Spider, so whenever a non-token artifact, creature, or vehicle enters the battlefield under control, we draw a card. That's super useful to get that card draw. It is 5 mana, but that's okay. We'll live with that. We can find ways to, get this out eventually. Tapala, just very useful in vehicles deck, buffs up our vehicles. When she crews one of our vehicles, we can pay X, and if we do, we'll reveal the top X cards of our library. We put all vehicle cards from among them into our hand, and the rest on the bottom of our library in any order. So pretty useful. Enthusiast Mechanaut, Ethereum Sculptor, and Foundry Inspector all fall into the same kind of category here, where they're creatures that sort of add mana, plus they basically can crew some of our vehicles and whatnot. So that's why they're here. They're not just here because, well, lol, they're here. They're here because we're playing a vehicle deck and we need bodies to crew things, and them doing something extra helps us out. So that's useful. Goldbug, which is Bumblebee, essentially. A lot of these ones aren't that interesting, at least from my perspective, at least especially for this deck, but they're on theme, so that's where a lot of these find themselves. The Scientist, at least this guy can tap for a whole bunch of mana if he gets a whole bunch of counters, and our commander can put counters on things pretty quickly, so that can be useful. Just sort of mana dork there. Jehoira just draws cards whenever we cast a legend or a artifact. We have a lot of artifacts. We do have some legends in here as well, so that can trigger a whole bunch to get us that card advantage we need. Lachelle, we prevent all combat damage that will be dealt to attacking artifact creatures we control. We want to protect our stuff so our stuff doesn't die in combat, and we can keep our board state afloat, essentially, more or less. But whenever one or more artifact creatures enter the battlefield under our control, we draw a card. It only chooses once per turn, but that's still okay. We care more about the protection than the card draw, but the card draw is nice. Magda sort of falls into the category that, Sculptor, Inspector, and Mechanaut kind of did. That it's kind of like a mana dork, I guess, for the most part. That also helps us crew our stuff, and then we can use those treasures, if we're not using them for mana, to 2 different artifact, and that's pretty darn useful because a lot of our deck is artifacts, so yeah, pretty useful. And then we've got the Strategist. He basically gets rid of something of our opponents and detains it. So yeah, that can be useful. The Medic, E can recur stuff from the graveyard equal to the amount of life we've gained. So that can be useful. But yeah, just kind of there. Research Thief. This is really useful. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to player, we draw a card, and it's a flash flyer. So we can just sneak it in when we're doing combat damage to people, or just before we're doing combat damage to people, and draw a whole bunch of cards out of nowhere when no one's really expecting it. Psy just creates a whole bunch of free artifacts for us to help us crew our stuff, and can sacrifice artifacts to draw cards. So really useful there. The Hired Muscle, we give it to our opponents. It's goaded, and we make them attack our opponents with it. And so, yeah, that's pretty cool. Shram, just here for more card draw, card advantage. Reality Chip, we can look at the top, and we can play the top card if it's of our library, if it's a land, and we can cast spells from the top. So, as long as it's equipped, essentially. But yeah, that's still pretty useful. We need that card advantage, need that card selection, and it'll crew stuff as well sometimes. Alright, now we'll go through all the artifacts that we have here. I won't really talk too much about the mana rocks, but I'll talk a little bit about them in just a sec. But the Surveyor, if it attacks, the defending player controls more lands than us. We search our library for Plains card, put it in the battlefield, tapped, and shuffle. White is our heaviest color in this deck, so getting our main color's worth of ramp, essentially, is well worth it. Still, even though it's kind of, in theory, a third of our deck, I won't talk about many of the mana rocks other than the really good ones, is what I'll do. Like, the more ones that have more utility, because you could just, like, put any, like, nice 2-drop mana rocks in here. Biden of Thassa, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, we may draw a card. That's very useful, and we can make creatures our opponent control this attack this turn if able. So that can force our opponents into attacking some of our opponents and whatnot, or whatever. Sometimes, though we don't usually have a whole lot of blockers, so sometimes they'll just attack us. The Cruiser, just with haste. And it is a creature on the first turn, so that's kind of nice. Forsaken Monument, whenever we tap for colors, we add an additional colors. Colorless creatures get +2/+2, and when we cast a colorless spell, we gain 2 life. Lots of little things that this does that are kind of useful. I don't know we tap for colors that much, but sometimes we do. We'll gain a bit of life here and there. Not that life gain's that important, but it's kind of nice. Just the cumulative effects there are pretty nice. Heart of Kirin, just nice flying vigilance there. The Hauler, when it deals combat damage to a player, we make a treasure token for each artifact they control, so can ramp us. The Imposter Mech can clone something of an opponent's, so that can be really useful to copy somebody's best thing, or even something semi-useful. The Paladin, this is a Warhammer 40k card, so I know if some people can't find these sorts of cards because they are kind of hard to find, that's okay. Don't worry about it. There's some other vehicles that are okay out there as well. But when it enters, it deals 4 damage to each opponent, and then it's a 6/6 trampler, so that's kind of nice. Mech Titan Core, we can get rid of it, and we can make it into its big 10/10 artifact there, and that's really, really powerful. But it's still pretty nice just to have this Mech Titan, vehicle in there, and it can do a whole lot more later on. The Servant, big 6/6 trampler, and it has ward, so people have to discard cards to target it, so that's kind of nice. When it becomes crewed for the first time each turn, if it was crewed by exactly 2 creatures, it gains whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, we draw 2 cards until end of turn. So it can draw us cards and can, sort of slow our opponents down from killing it. So it's all about card advantage. Mind Leak Mechs becomes crewed for the first time. It becomes a copy of target non-legendary creature that crewed it this turn, except it's a vehicle, and 3/4 flying. So, we can make copies of things that we crew with, so that could be useful. Mizium Tank, whenever we cast a non-creature spell, it becomes a creature and gets +1/+1. So it can get really big if we have a whole lot of mana on the field and whatnot, so we can get a whole bunch of these artifacts out and then just punch real hard with it. So, yeah, that can be real good. Or Mobilizer becomes crewed. Another target vehicle we control becomes a artifact creature until end of turn, so we essentially crew 2 things for 1, which is really useful. The Skyship, I'm not too sure about this one, actually. I think we'd want to exile our own things with it, but yeah, that's just me, because I'm always thinking, like, our opponents might not have anything that's actually useful for us, so I'd rather just do our own stuff and slowly get our own stuff back. But it exiles someone's graveyard. When it deals combat damage to a player, we may put a card exiled with it onto the battlefield under our control. So, pretty useful to recur stuff. Parhelion, when it attacks, we create 2/4 flying angels. So those can, start ending the game pretty quickly. I know at this point, usually I'm thinking, 6, 7, 8 mana. Okay, it's got to really kind of win the game or whatnot. So, but this is a lower power deck, so I kind of curbed my anticipation for this deck. The Colossus, we can pay 2 mana to make it a vehicle. We control an artifact creature until end of turn, which can be pretty powerful sometimes. The prototype here, whenever a vehicle we control attacks, we make a pilot. So those parts can be pretty useful to crew our vehicles or to be jump blockers or anything. And it's just nice to have, extra power coming on the board and at all times anyway. Bank Buster. Enters the battlefield with 3 charge counters on it. We can remove a charge counter on it to draw a card. If there are no charge counters on it, we get a treasure and a pilot, so that's pretty useful. Draws some cards, makes some mana, makes some pilots. So all sorts of little things that we would want. Shorikai just loots and makes pilots for us, so that's pretty useful. Smuggler's Copter just looting for us, that's pretty useful. Scourge Hanger Mech enters the battlefield, deals damage equal to twice the number of vehicles you control to target creature or planeswalker, so just kill a creature or planeswalker for the most part. Sort of Hearth and Home, just getting us that land ramp whenever we hit, and also gives us protection from white and green, which is kind of useful a lot of the time. Sort of the Animus, same sort of thing, that land ramp that we sort of need. And then we've got the Squadron Hawk Gunship enters the battlefield. We create 2/2/2 white warriors with vigilance. When it attacks, attacking creatures you control gain flying until end of turn. That's really powerful and whatnot. And it's a big 6/6 flyer because it comes with its own things that will basically crew it and probably something else. And just giving everything mass evasion's just really good. The Colossus, just a big 7/7 trample haste, so that's okay, not too much to write home about there. The Express, when it attacks, we put a counter on it, so that's alright. Wayfarer's Ball will just land ramp here. Weatherlight deals combat damage to a player with the top 5 cards of our library, reveal a artifact card or a legendary card from among them and put it into our hand, or put it into our hand and put the rest on the bottom. So yeah, that can be useful. The Weatherlight completed. We've got 2 Weatherlights, both Weatherlights. As long as it has 4 or more counters on it, it's a creature until it's, in addition to its other types. Whenever a creature we control dies, we put a counter on it. Whenever a creature dies, put a counter on, then draw a card if it has 7 or more. But if it doesn't, we scry 1. So it scries us 1 and draws us card after we have 7 on it. So yeah, that can be very useful. It can be a little bit annoying to kill our own things or whatnot, or have our things die, but that does happen through the game naturally sometimes, so it is still pretty good. So that is the list. You can find the list in the description below, or in the comments below, rather. And let me know what you think. But yeah, this is the list that I came up with, so I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you find some great stuff that's more than meets the eye in this one. Yeah, if I don't see you down there in those comments, I hope to see you again in the next one.